morning and welcome to worship at Centenary United Methodist Church. I'm Pastor Michelle Hargrave, leading worship with Pastor Erica Kosher, and we are delighted to be with you. And isn't it a beautiful, beautiful morning to gather together to worship God? I pray that God's Spirit will be known to us this morning as we celebrate God's love and healing power in our midst today. I invite the ushers to take their pew pads and to hand them out. I'm going to let you know that if you love the pew pads, you should probably just say a special thank you to them in the next week or two, because the Extravagant Welcome team is working on a new system to be able to better welcome people who are visiting with us for the first time. So we are going to be saying goodbye to the pew pads in a couple weeks and introducing something new. Just letting you know, we'll talk a little bit more about that change before it happens. But for now, it's a great opportunity to let us know that you're here, and please share it with those in your row. And there's several invitations for our life together in the bulletin. Opportunity to sing in the choir. I can tell you that when we practice on Wednesday, the song just stays in my head. Doesn't it do that for you all? It just flows through my head for this next several days. It's a wonderful gift. There's book groups, and also our rummage sale for the fall is coming up. And you have some other invitations.
A couple other invitations, yes. Children, we do start Sunday school. Today we will have it upstairs at 10:10. So right afterwards, you guys can come up. We'll have donuts for you up there. So come on up and get that. All right, and also this Wednesday, last Wednesday, we had a fabulous ice cream topping scavenger hunt. It was so much energy and joy in this building on Wednesday night. This week, we start our classes in earnest. So be sure to be here. Come for supper at 5. Classes will start between 5:45 and 6, and there is something for everyone. So be sure to join us for that. And then coming up this Saturday night, something new that our Church Growth Committee is trying. They will be doing Centenary After Dark and serving some walking tacos out in the parking lot on Cherry Street to college students who are on their way down that way, towards that part of town. And so we are extending hospitality to them, getting some food in their bellies, and we are still looking for volunteers. So if you are interested in helping between 9 and 11 on Saturday night, please talk to Carla and to Mike Lavin, and they will put you to work with some setup and some prep.
And then do please come to church the next morning too.
Yes, and it's not an excuse to get out of being here Sunday morning, so. All right. And now I invite you to stand and greet one another with the peace of Christ this morning. I invite you to remain standing for our gathering. Call out to God. Sing praise to God. You turn our mourning into dancing. Please join in our opening hymn. You may be seated. Please join me in our unison prayer. Jesus, you know what will heal us. You know what will make us whole, alive to dance and laugh and dream. You know what will make us know your love and free us to let it flow right through us into the world. Yet we doubt it can really happen. We doubt it can be that simple. We doubt that you can really make a difference in our lives, that you can make us new. We are afraid to do the simple yet impossible things you invite us to do. Forgive us our doubts and fears, Jesus, and keep inviting us into the water of life you have for us. Forgive us and walk with us as we take steps into all that is possible. Amen. I invite the kids to join me up front. Come on up. Good morning. Come on up. How's everybody doing? Good. All right, I have a question for you guys. Do you like to follow directions? No, sometimes maybe. All right, so can you think of something that you have to have directions for doing? You think of something that might need directions? School all the time, right? Directions in school all the time. This is how you're going to line up for lunch. This is how you're going to put your shoes in your locker. This is how you're going to do this math assignment. Lots and lots and lots of directions, right? And sometimes we get directions from our parents, don't we? Yeah, they tell us, okay, I want you to brush your teeth and go to bed, right? Sometimes they're not hard, but do we always want to follow the directions? No, definitely not. Even grown-ups sometimes don't like following directions very well. It's kind of a secret, but sometimes we don't like to do that either. But directions are kind of important, aren't they? Yeah. So today in our service, we're going to hear a story about a man who didn't really want to follow God's direction. He thought that he was supposed to do something really, really hard, and God's direction was really simple. It was a really easy thing to do, and he thought, well, if God's giving a direction, it should be much harder. Did you know that Jesus gives us a direction every day? Did you know that I brought Jesus in this morning. His hair is pretty wild. He obviously did not follow directions to get ready for church today. He's looking a little crazy. So, did you know that Jesus has a direction for all of us? Do you know what it is? Yeah. Come to church. That's a very good direction. What else? Can you think? To love people. Exactly. Jesus says the direction that I give you is to love people. So how do we love people? Oh, brotherly, sisterly love. I love it. Are we kind? Do we give smiles and say hello and good morning? We do lots of things to show Jesus' love, don't we? And is it really hard to do? Does Jesus say this is going to be so hard to do? No, it's pretty easy, isn't it? We can all share a smile, can't we? Yeah, and that shows God's love. So sometimes in life we have to follow directions that we don't always want to follow. But we can always follow Jesus' direction. That is to love other people and to care for other people. And it's not that hard. So today when you're listening to the story, think about what would you do if you were given directions, and which one would you have followed? And was it hard or was it easy? All right, let's have a prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for giving us one of the easiest directions there is, to love each other. Help us to be good stewards of your love this week. Help us to make friends, to be kind to our teachers and our parents, and to help us to come back to church, ready to get more love in our hearts to go out and share in the world. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. Thanks, guys. You can go back to your seats.
River in Judea. As we gather for our time of prayer this morning, there are many prayers we hold in our hearts. We lift them before God, and these prayers, specific prayers of the congregation. We offer prayers for those affected by the hurricanes, wildfires, and earthquakes around our globe. Prayers for our neighbors here and around the world who face a daily struggle for justice, equality, and peace. Prayers for the United Methodist Church and its leadership with Bishop O as we seek a welcome for all people. Prayers for our servicemen and women, and especially the grandchildren of our congregation, Eric, Adam, Rebecca, and Josh. We offer prayers for all the people who cross the threshold of this church, and continue to pray that God will break through in Centenary and in our lives. We offer these prayers for the Holy Grounds community, for Shannon and Kay, and for many looking for a safe place to sleep. Prayers of comfort for Ruth Nisley, and prayers for healing for Pete Hansen, Pat Peterson, Ava Johnson, Marcine Klunder, Marianne Bench, and Susan Tuzenot. And now, as we have a time of silence, let us continue to offer these up to God and also those persons and situations that we hold in our hearts. Let's pray in silence. And as we trust that God hears our prayers, let us sing together.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, you invite us into many places. You invite us into the world to seek justice and equality, to bring healing and light. Today, you invite us to aid those affected by natural disasters and to pay attention to what the earth is telling us. You invite us into relationship with our neighbors, both near and far. You call us to listen and to learn from those who are different from us, so that we may see you in new ways. Today, you call us to ministries of food and shelter. You invite us into conversation about the ways we see your kingdom here on earth and the ways in which we live out Jesus' call to be your hands and feet in the world. Today, you call us to step out of what is comfortable and into what is real. You invite us into action. Being your people in the world today is not a passive activity. Today, we pray for those of this community that are in need of your strength and your healing. We pray for those who serve our country with courage and hope. And we actively listen for the ways that you break through in our lives and in our church, calling us into life with you. We pray that when the invitation you give is difficult to accept, you will give us strength and wonder and hope. And when the invitation is an easy way, you will help us to accept and walk on. And now, as the people of God, we lift our voices together in the prayer that your Son taught us how to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. One of our MCCI prescriptions was to continue to lead conversations within our community around housing and food security. We're already miles ahead of many other congregations with the breakfast ministry that we do each and every week. And so over the last several months, we have been listening to our guests who come to breakfast. We've spoken with our partner agencies who stop down to see what's going on. We've talked to social workers and case managers and school social workers and counselors, and it has become very clear that emergency shelter is a significant need in this community. Last year alone, over 365 students in Mankato schools were listed as highly mobile, which means they were sleeping in their cars, they were doubling up with friends, they were sleeping on couches. So along with our ecumenical partners in Connections Ministry, we began to explore what would it look like if we used our buildings that sit empty at night for shelter. There are lots of models of this all across the country, and as our partners through Connections Ministry came together, we decided that Mankato was ready for a rotating shelter to house those individuals who don't have anywhere else to sleep at night. The leadership of Centenary took it into consideration. We talked to many of you, we listened, we struggled, we discussed, we thought about our space, and we have agreed that we will host a couple of very critical weeks, the very first week and the week between Christmas and New Year's, as our weeks to host this rotating shelter. Mike Lavin is going to serve as our congregational coordinator, so no doubt he will be contacting you to see if you are willing to bring a snack or to provide some welcome and some hospitality. We know we're so good at that here. And it's important. It's important as we continue to be the leader in these conversations around food and around shelter, that we set an example as other churches see what's happening and come on board to help make a difference. The offerings that we take each week at Centenary enable us to lead in these important and crucial ways. And I invite us this morning, as we give of our gifts, to know that we are truly being the hands and feet of God in this world. So may God bless our offerings and bless the ways that we make a difference to those most in need every day. O Lord our God, you graciously welcome all who seek you. We are grateful that you have taught us your commandments so that we may live as people who belong to you. Guide us by your Spirit so that our attitudes towards others and our daily actions will honor you. Let the ministries of our church reach out to show and tell our neighbors of your faithful love. Receive our gifts and offerings for the sake of Jesus our Lord. Amen. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now the Arameans, on one of their raids, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress,
"If only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy."
So Naaman went in and told his lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said,
"Go then, and I will send along a letter to the king of Israel."
He went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read,
"When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy."
When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said,
"Am I God to give death or life that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me."
But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king.
"Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel."
So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying,
Go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean.
But Naaman became angry, and he went away, saying,
I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?
He turned and went away in a rage. But his servants approached him and said to him,
Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more, when all he said to you was, wash and be clean?
So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. His flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company. He came and stood before him and said,
Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Please accept a present from your servant.
But he said,
As the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will accept nothing.
He urged him to accept, but he refused. Then Naaman said,
If not, please let 2 mule loads of earth be given to your servant. For your servant will no longer offer burnt offerings or sacrifice to any god except the Lord. But may the Lord pardon your servant on one account. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, leaning on my arm, and I bow down in the house of Rimmon, when I do bow down in the house of Rimmon, may the Lord pardon your servant on this one count.
He said to him,
Go in peace. Before I begin my sermon, I want to acknowledge that the ending of the sermon is completely inspired by Walter Brueggemann, and I put a reference to Walter Brueggemann's writing in your palimpsest, so you'll know where I got that from. So Naaman was a powerful, powerful man, a mighty warrior in the land of Syria. He was a commander. He had helped win battles for his king, and he had a great deal of wealth. But he also had leprosy. And leprosy is a difficult disease. It was a disease that could not be cured. It caused nerve damage, and it was a skin disease that was highly contagious. And if you had leprosy, you became isolated from everyone in your life. You could no longer work. You could no longer live with your family. It would ruin your life, and there was no known cure in the world at that time. So Naaman was quite concerned as he noticed the leprosy start to grow. But there was a young girl in his house, a young girl from the land of Israel, and she said to him, If only you could go where I am from, and you would know that there is a prophet there, and he would be able to heal you. So Naaman went to his king, and he said to the king, There is a prophet in Israel, and I need to go and see him so that I can be healed. I need a letter of introduction. So the king of Syria wrote the letter to the king of Israel, introducing his servant Naaman and this mighty warrior, and sent it with him. And so Naaman went to the king of Israel, and he had gold, and he had silver, and he had several beautiful garments, beautiful outfits of clothes with him. And he had horses and chariots and servants. And he came to the king of Israel with all of this. And he presented his letter, which introduced him and said that he was looking for healing in the land of Israel. But the king was terrified, and he sent Naaman away, and he tore his clothes, and he said, The king of Syria is trying to pick a fight with me. They're trying to have a battle with us because I can't heal this man. We can't have any healing for him. What are we going to do? This is just a ruse for a war. And so the king was very distressed. But Elisha heard about this, and he said to the king, Just send him to me. Send him to me, and I'll take care of this. Now, Naaman didn't know Elisha. He didn't know about Elisha. He didn't know that Elisha was the prophet who had studied under the prophet Elijah. And he's the one who crossed the river Jordan with Elijah and was there when the chariots of fire came and took him up into heaven. He was the one who was there. And the mantle of Elijah's ministry fell on his student Elisha. And Elisha carried that ministry on. He didn't know that Elisha is the one who was able to purify a stream that had gone bad and also make safe a pot of stew that had been poisoned. He didn't know that Elisha was the kind of prophet who, when some children teased him for his bald head, he cursed them and a bear came and killed them moments later. He didn't know that Elisha was the kind of prophet who, when he encountered a widow who was wondering how she was going to feed her children in the drought and in her poverty, he had her take all kinds of empty vessels into her home, and he made them fill with olive oil, and they were filled with olive oil perpetually, so that they could sell the olive oil and they would have enough to eat until the drought was over. And he didn't know that Elisha was the prophet who, when he met a woman who yearned for a child, he said, well, you will have a child in the next season. But then when that child grew sick and died, and she sent word to him and said, how dare you send me a child only to take him away from me? This has broken my heart. And he went to that child and he revived that child. He resurrected that child and brought him back to life. That's the prophet Elisha. But Naaman didn't know any of that. So he came to the prophet's house, and he came and he stood in front of the door with all of his company, his chariots, his horses, his gold, and his silver, and all of the gifts that he brought with him, and knocked on the door, and Elisha did not come to the door. He sent his servant to the door. And the servant came out and said, the prophet says that you should go to the river Jordan and wash 7 times. And then he closed the door and left. And Naaman was offended. He was furious. So he got back into his chariot and started to head home. But his servants, very wise and very careful servants, said, you know, you've come a long way, and the directions are quite simple. If it had been much more complicated, surely you would have followed them. So why not, let's just try it. Just try it and see what happens. And so Naaman went to the Jordan River. He went to the Jordan River. And then he went into the river. He went into under the water, and he came up. And when he came up, he said, I can't believe this prophet could not even come to the door. Doesn't he know who I am? How dare he offend me by sending his servant out? How dare he not come and see me, Naaman, the mighty warrior from Syria? And he went down in the water again, and he came up, and then he said, and why should I have to wash in this river? This river is not a special river. Well, I have better rivers in my home, the rivers of Arphar and Arabah and Pharpar. Those rivers are wonderful rivers. Why do I have to wash here? And he went down in the water a 3rd time, and he came up, and he said, and this is such a simple direction. That prophet should have come out and waved his hands over me or something. He should have done something more than this. And so then he went into the water a 4th time, and he came up, and he said, oh, you know, I bet my servants think I'm a fool. This is such a foolish thing I am doing. I bet they're laughing at me. And he went into the water a 5th time, and he came up, and he said, oh, I am going to go and talk to that prophet when this is done, and I am going to have some things to say to him. Wait till he sees what I have to say to him. And he went into the water a 6th time, and he came up, and he said, what if this doesn't work? What if I can't find healing? If I can't be healed, I will no longer be able to be a warrior. I will no longer be able to be a part of my family. I will be isolated, and this disease will only grow. What happens then? And he went into the water and came up a 7th time. And his skin was like that of a young boy. You know the skin of a child when they're young and they haven't had any accidents or illnesses yet, and there's no scar, and there's nothing, and it's just full of promise and hope. That kind of skin. That's what his skin was like. So he dried off, and he gathered his servants, and he went back to the house of Elisha. And Elisha met him at the door this time, and Naaman said, I am healed. I am healed. Let me give you these gifts of gold and silver and these garments that I have brought from Syria for you. And Elisha said, no, no, I cannot receive these gifts. Because Naaman still didn't know. He still didn't know the Lord. He didn't know that this is a God whose economy is not one where only some people can afford to be healed. God's economy is not one where you can buy healing, where you can earn healing, where you get it because you're faithful or good. In God's economy, it's available for everyone. It's a gift. It's a gift like all the gifts of God. Health and life and love and grace are gifts, and they are freely given. And you can't buy them, and you can't bully them, and you can't barter for them. But Naaman didn't know that. He didn't know the Lord yet. And so then he said to Elisha, well, all right, if I can't do that, then at least let me take some dirt from the river. I'm going to take 2 mule carts of dirt, 2 big carts full of the dirt from this country. Because obviously God lives here in Israel and is in the banks of the river here. And I want some of this God at home where I'm going, because it isn't the same there. So I'll take some dirt so I can remember what God has done here. And by the way, don't mind, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to help my king when he goes to worship his God. And I'll have to go into the sanctuary of his God, and I'll have to bow down when he bows down, and I'm sorry about that. But I will know that this is the only God. I will know that this is the real God, and the dirt will help remind me. And Elisha didn't explain to Naaman that God is not located in the dirt, and God is not located in the water, and God is not confined by those things. God isn't confined in the water or in the dirt. God isn't confined in the boundaries of one country or place in the world. And Elisha didn't explain that there is only one God, and so when he goes into that other place, that's an empty thing, that God of Israel will be there and is everywhere and is the one who brings life and love and healing and grace. But Elisha didn't say all of that. He just said, go in peace. Go in peace. Because Elisha knew that the peace of God, the shalom of God, the wholeness and healing and well-being of God is bigger than the healing that Naaman had just experienced. He knew that the shalom and the peace and the grace and the love of God is something that can't be bought or sold. It is a free gift. He knew that God was only beginning to work in the life of Naaman. He was only beginning to start the healing that would take place, not just in his skin, but in his heart and in his life. Elisha knew that the shalom, the peace of God, is a gift that comes even when healing doesn't come, even when the thing that we long for the most doesn't come. The peace of God, the shalom of God, is a gift. And it is a gift that God holds out to everyone. Elisha knew all of that. Naaman didn't know. But Elisha sends him off with the gift of peace, shalom, waiting to see what else God would do in his life. Go in peace. Go in peace. Go in peace. Amen. Let's sing about the peace that's in the river. Go. spiritual than a Sunday school song, but it was one of the first songs that I ever learned, and we did the motions. So you ever, yeah, it was hard to hold my hand still. We just love like an ocean when we were little kids. We loved that part. But it's, that's a song that's just deep in me. But this other song is the one I think we need to hear at the end. The tricky part about this sermon, isn't it wonderful how Naaman was healed? Isn't it wonderful? And don't we long for healing for our own bodies and those that we love? And even with all the resources that we have, sometimes it is mysterious and elusive. So all week as I've been thinking about this story, thinking, these healing stories are just hard to preach because we come up with the grief and the loss that we experience in our own bodies and in those that we love. And I just come to that last line of the story when Elisha said, "Go in peace." That is bigger. It is bigger than the healing. So from the hymn we sang in the middle, My Life Flows On, here's the last verse. The peace of Christ makes fresh my heart. Fresh like that skin that Naaman experienced. A fountain ever springing. All things are mine since I am his. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm. While to that rock I'm clinging, since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? This is our hope. This is our hope, that the peace of God is a gift that surpasses all understanding, and it can be ours. Go in peace. Amen.